All right, we're going to move right into the next thing here.
We will launch a new age.
I am innocent. They're coming after me. Psyops.
So good. Thank you. Who made us those new
Caleb,
jingles?
we're going to thank him later on.
We'll thank him. Yeah. Thank you, Caleb. We couldn't pass up the opportunity to play those right off the bat. Okay, I got some updates on the Trump thing. You know, the Trump thing is so overwhelming. We kind of just have to cover it one day a week now. Similar to how it's not a formula, but we've kind of been doing Ukraine, Russia on Wednesdays. Trump, you know, a lot of the Trump stuff starts happening on Friday and goes over the weekend because
they need clicks on weekends. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
It keeps the clips coming over the weekend. But my gosh, Gons, I was working yesterday reading articles and it was incredible. I just got sucked down the most fascinating series of events in regards to the Trump Mar-a-Lago raid thing. And so I'm going to bring a couple articles here to just kind of set the stage.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yep, ready.
Okay, we're going to start at HuffPo. Now, we don't do a lot of Huffington Post, mainly because they're just not good at what they do. But Huffington Post is on a war path over the weekend.
Rampage.
And it's fascinating. So this is coming from Huffington Post. Now, remember, there was the sort of inklings that there was a mole in the Trump camp. And there's theories that he, you know, fed bad information to root out the mole and blah, 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 blah. This is Huffington Post headline. Matt Gaetz's GOP opponent releases ad suggesting he's the Mar-a-Lago informant. Oh,
sounds like a marketing shtick.
Exactly. Isn't it hilarious? It isn't
I'm the guy.
It isn't like Trump catches mole or, you know, the mole outs himself or leaked documents. It's Matt Gaetz releases an attack ad. A Republican primary challenger to Representative Matt Gaetz has released an attack ad suggesting the Florida congressman tipped off the FBI about potentially classified documents stored at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence in Palm Beach. Quote, when Trump really endorses someone, he goes big, the ad's narrator says. I wish we had it to play the clip. Quote, what does Trump know? Is Gaetz the informant?
Real subtle.
Says it straight outright. The 30-second spot by Mark Lombardo's campaign tells voters that Gaetz, quote, put himself first, ahead of Trump and ahead of you. Noting that the Florida lawmaker unsuccessfully pressured Trump for a blanket pardon after the January 6, 2021 riot at the U.S. Capitol. It also slammed him for paying an attorney who represented the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
Ooh.
That just keeps coming back, doesn't it?
It's the only tangible attack vector that
it is a real attack vector for sure. Trump's base has been incensed amid reports that an informant tipped off the FBI about documents kept at Trump's Florida home, paving the way for last week's raid of the property. Lombardo, a Marine combat veteran, bills himself as an America First conservative who supports Trump. On his site, he accuses Gaetz of repeatedly showing poor judgment and putting his political interests ahead of yours. There has not been any public evidence to suggest that Gaetz is the informant. And then it goes on. I think it's fascinating that the attack ad includes Gaetz puts himself first instead of Trump and ahead of you. It's like the lack of loyalty to Trump is a very real and convincing attack ad topic.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, he cares about himself more than he cares about Trump is a very shows a very strange mentality to me. But, you know, we're not like pro-Trumpers here, so maybe that doesn't sound so weird to some other people. But yeah, there you go. Okay, so we've got that floating around, just like who's the mole? Who's the mole? And now you've got Republican primary candidates literally throwing each other under the bus. Well, not literally, but you get it. They're accusing each other.
Yeah.
They're figuratively throwing each other under the bus, publicly accusing one another of being a mole in the Trump administration, which is just
kind
very
of
interesting.
A disturbing state of affairs of American politics,
Truly
if you ask me.
is.
But
it's got
continue.
a truly sort of dystopian.
Yeah.
It kind of I don't know why, but it reminds me of like an 80s sci-fi. It reminds me of Dune. Is what it does. So, and Star Wars is a little bit this way, but if you remember Dune, I don't know if you're super familiar with Dune, like so much of it is just kind of really boring space politics.
Space politics, yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of Star Wars is like that too. It's like half of the movie is just space politics, and it's really dystopian and really strange, and it just kind of reminds me of that, watching, such intense public accusations going back and forth in the Florida primaries. Yeah. Now, we're just touching on that. We're moving on to Newsweek.com here, Newsweek. Which is we've uncovered is more likely than not a CIA outlet. The headline is Trump wanted to use classified documents as leverage. Ex-lawyer says. Ex-lawyer. Michael Cohen. Remember that guy?
Yeah.
He's back, baby. He's back. Michael Cohen, who previously worked as an attorney and vice president for the Trump Organization, said he believes former President Donald Trump wanted to use some of the classified documents he kept at Mar-a-Lago as leverage in the future. And then it talks about the raid. I'm going to jump down to some of the quotes here. Quote, this is under the first picture there, Gons. Quote, I think he was going to use it as leverage, Cohen said. There's no other reason. So he thinks he's going to use it as leverage. There's no other reason. That apparently by that he means that he wants to talk about right now with the reporter. The former Trump administration executive said he, quote, could understand, end quote, by the way. They quoted could understand and then go on in their own words why his former boss wanted to keep, quote, the love letters, end quote, from North Korea's Kim Jong-un. Cohen said Trump may show such items to people in the future in an effort to impress them. Impresses in quotes too. So this leverage, the first example of leverage is not like blackmail or selling it to the Russians. It's just like, hey, look at my letter. He loves me.
Kim Jong-un loves Trump.
The quote says, so he'll put out a letter from the Queen or pull out a letter from Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan or from Russian President Vladimir Putin or Kim Jong-un, like the love letters he kept talking about for months and months. Okay, he'll show those. Oh, look what this person said about me. I'm really smart, really handsome, really rich. That's what he'd use those for, Cohen said.
Oh my gosh. How, what?
So
I don't even have words. I'm completely like, what's the point? We know the point, Newsweek, but really, this is complete nonsense.
It's hilarious. In the absence
it's such a waste of words and energy.
Yeah, exactly. In the absence of the affidavit being released or anything, which would be the real interesting thing, they're just like, I don't know, talk to Cohen. Yeah, he just likes the letters and he'd show them off. But it's also giving a tip because they released the receipt of documents from the raid. But Cohen is here really suggesting like he was keeping personal items, love letters.
Yeah, it's not political. It's like self-serving.
Right, exactly.
And which, by the way...
Which is like, surprise, surprise, American politician, self-serving.
I was going to say, don't you think Obama has some letter to the Kenyan president or something? Hey, look at this. I shook his hand. He loved me. Or like some, it's every president probably has a little bit of that. So I don't know, whatever. Who cares?
Well, and there's other things, but there you go. There's one more quote here that is a little bit more intense. Here's the quote. The second they would put him in handcuffs, talking about arresting Trump, he would turn around and say, I have the documentation showing, for example, he's just giving an example, where our nuclear launch pads are. The former attorney said, quote, this is what I believe. He would use it and say, if you proceed with this, I'm telling you right now, there are 20 of my loyal supporters. You don't know who they are, but we will release that information to Russia, to Iran, to whoever it may be. So you have Michael Cohen just really spinning a fascinating yarn of the possibilities of why Trump would have kept certain documents. And the range of possibilities are he's keeping old love letters to show how much Kim Jong-un thought he was handsome, to the second you put handcuffs on him, he's going to send nuclear secrets to Russia.
Wow.
Yeah. It's really,
spoken like a true intel narrative man with no self-conscience and self-critical thinking, whatever. I mean, come on.
If you've been wondering where Michael Cohen's been, by the way, the former attorney who was disbarred received a 3-year prison sentence in December of 2018, but was released. He was released to serve the remainder from home during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah, so maybe he's the one that was like, "Oh, you got to get me out of here! Come on,
got to get me out of here, man!
That COVID or something.
Let me out of here. I'll say whatever you want. Just get me out of here.
Get me out." So, all right, okay.
So you can kind of see where this is starting to head here. Now, one of the most interesting ones that I came across, Fox News headline: "The Trump Mar-a-Lago search was justified." Now, this is an opinion by Bradley P. Moss on Fox News, but it was pushed out to all their push notifications, so they really wanted people to read this. It's not too long, and it's pretty fascinating, so we'll just get going. Ever since news broke 2 weeks ago that the FBI had executed a search warrant on former President Donald Trump's residence at Mar-a-Lago, the political world has been aflame with hyperbole, accusation, innuendo, and hysteria.
Oh, wow. Exactly how they wanted it to be.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. That's it's the news. Of course,
it's almost like, hey, it's working.
Every legal pundit and pundits pretending to know something about the law have emerged to try to explain what is really happening here. And the former president and his allies, as is their custom, have sought to flood the zone with political justifications and haphazard legal explanations to deflect from his conduct. The truth needs to be set forth plainly and simply. And so let's get down to brass tacks here. What happened on August 8th, 2022 was not tyranny. It was not political persecution. It was not a minor dust-up over bureaucratic processes blown out of proportion. It was the criminal justice system operating just like it does with any other private citizen on any other given day, ending in a Y.
Oh my gosh.
So stop freaking out, everybody.
Kind of terrifying, but okay.
That's exactly the thought that I had. I'm like, okay, Fox, if you're trying to say, like, tell everybody to calm down, I get it, whatever, if that's what you're doing. But to say that that was totally normal and we should all expect the same treatment is the most terrifying way to think about it. It goes on. Trump was the president and commander-in-chief up until noon on January 20th, 2021. The moment Joe Biden took the oath of office, Trump became just another private citizen in his 70s who vacations in Florida during the winter months to avoid the bitter cold back in his native home in the Northeast. He was no longer shielded by any privileges or protections of the office of the presidency. At the point beyond physical security and protection, he is subject to the laws of the United States just like anyone else. And I had started to put together a list of reasons why that is not the case. And I just decided it wasn't the most profitable way to spend our time here. But it's also wrong. Ex-presidents have a long list of benefits, expanding past just having
some security guards.
Yeah,
of course.
I mean, you get diplomatic immunity, you get diplomatic passports, you get there's a lot of stuff that an ex-president gets besides protection. So I don't know so much. It kind of made me question this guy, but what is also true is that Trump had particular legal obligation as the former president to properly turn over presidential records to the National Archives and Records Administration. That is mandated by the Presidential Records Act because those records are the property of the United States. They are not Trump's personal property. In a competent White House, this process would have started within days of his election and blah, 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 blah. Goes on to say, basically, look, everybody else gives their records back. Why wouldn't you give your records back? Blah, blah, blah. There's nothing here. Everybody calm down.
We don't know that that's true either.
That's exactly. Thank you. That is sort of assumed, but also we just don't know. There could be plenty of situations where, I mean, even if it is just a love letter from Putin, you don't who's to say that Obama didn't keep his love letters from who would have written him love letters? Well, there's the Ukraine thing.
Ukraine. Yeah.
So let's keep moving. He gets into the top secret and the confidential and kind of the different levels there, but mainly says, blah, 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 blah. He should have given it all back. You can, skipping down past the third video there. Those search warrants also tend to result in agents. Oh, this is the part. Okay. Our jails are filled with people who have gone to jail for less. Good point. Search warrants are executed on properties and residences every day by local, state, and federal law enforcement authorities in a manner no different than what happened at Mar-a-Lago. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know about no different, but okay. Yeah. Those individuals as lawyers also are not permitted to impede or micromanage the execution of the warrant, just as Trump's lawyers were not permitted to do so. Those search warrants also tend to result in agents rummaging through areas that contain personal items, but which fall within the scope of the search warrant, such as happened at Mar-a-Lago. Okay, except for the passports weren't on the list, but okay. The individuals subject to the search warrant also are not permitted access to underlying probable cause affidavit unless and until there is an actual criminal indictment. Trump is not special in that regard. None of this means former President Trump will ultimately be indicted. He very well might be, and other individuals who removed properly marked classified records from secure locations have been prosecuted and sent to prison for that offense. If Trump is indicted, he will have access to the full criminal justice process and can make every declassification defense he wishes at that time in pre-trial motions. Until that time, let the justice system run its course. Fox News coming out and just saying, hey, enough of this craziness, everybody. Just let it happen. Just totally let it happen. And you might think, as I did immediately, to make this about Trump, Fox and Trump's relationship. Ooh, Fox is, letting Trump, letting him off the hook or leaving him out to dry or something. Fox turning on Trump, which, we've kind of followed that winding path before. But then it occurred to me, this is not Fox distancing from Trump or, turning on Trump. This is Fox siding with the FBI. Very specifically, we have Fox siding with the FBI and the justice system altogether. And this is sort of reflective of how a lot of Republicans are kind of going back on their defund the FBI rhetoric. Remember all the defund the FBI stuff?
Yeah.
And so we've seen Republican after Republican kind of pull back from that and And which is probably for their own good. You don't want to make enemies with the FBI, especially if you're a politician who has a midterm coming up, because anything could come up.
Yeah.
Now, this includes, for an example, this is not a full read, but just a mention here. Another HuffPo article, headline, GOP candidate says FBI agents would be put in a body bag if his home were searched. Florida. They're all Florida people. Everything's Florida. You got the Matt Gaetz and the other guy going on in Florida. You got the Mar-a-Lago. And now a Florida Republican candidate for Congress threatened that FBI agents would go home in a body bag if they ever try to search his house the way they did Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago home. In a shocking video he posted to YouTube on Saturday, Sarasota businessman Martin Hyde said, quote, "I wish they'd turn up in my home because they'd have gone home in a body bag."
It will kill.
When they turned, this is another quote, "When they turned up at Mar-a-Lago and raided the home of the President Trump, that was an assault on every one of the 75 million people who voted for Donald Trump. It was an assault on democracy," Hyde baselessly claimed in the video. They're just putting that word baselessly anywhere now. It doesn't even fit. Quote, "These people would stop at nothing." And then it goes into the story. But this is the kind of rhetoric that you're hearing from, from a lot of GOP. Republican people. Now, interestingly enough, if you go all the way down to the bottom of this article, Gons, I don't know if we want to play it, but a police body cam footage came out of this Hyde fella, Martin Hyde, where he got pulled over for speeding. And
is it a fella or a lady? Is it a fella?
Is a fella.
Okay.
Martin Hyde is a fella. And he got pulled over for speeding. And the police released the body cam footage of how he responded to the officer. And it is atrocious.
Oh my gosh. It is asking me for all kinds of weird things here.
What?
It's for some reason it's not allowing me to just pull it up. I got privacy thingies or something.
If we don't need to bother.
Okay.
But he just treats this police person atrociously. He is the worst human. He's like, "Do you know who I am? Call your boss. Call your boss. You know who I am? You're making a big mistake, lady." And she's like, "Dude, you're going 50 in a school zone. I have to pull you over." He's like, "You don't know the power I have to ruin you."
Oh boy.
It's not a good look for this fella. So just to give you an idea of who he is. So that's the kind of stuff they're dealing with. Back to HuffPo, okay?
More HuffPo.
More HuffPo.
Puff and Ho. I know. I almost said something bad. Continue.
Well, that's part of the fun, is that this whole storyline is unfolding at Huffington Post. So they got the message, okay? There's an agenda going on here. But this one was very fun also. HuffPost, Trump suddenly loves sleazy FBI agents. Insists he always has their backs.
You know what? This is the same author, Mary Poppenfuss.
Is it the same one as the last one?
Same author.
Same author. So this Poppenfuss person got the memo.
Not the Matt Gaetz article, but the last two are the same, yeah.
Yeah, sort of single-handedly creating a very interesting narrative. Right. She's a narrative crafter. Former President Donald Trump has pulled a dramatic about-face to hail great FBI agents in the wake of the search of his Mar-a-Lago home, and boasts that he has always had their backs. He also claimed in a Truth Social post on Saturday that FBI agents even love him a lot. Those were quotes, by the way. Trump attacked the FBI as seditious, abusive, criminal, and sleazy after agents hauled out about 20 boxes of White House material from his Florida home, including 11 sets of classified information. Those records should have been turned over to the National Archives when Trump's term ended, according to the Presidential Records Act. In days that followed the search, Trump baselessly called it a sneak attack. Baselessly again!
It's her favorite word.
is just putting baselessly in places that it doesn't.
She baselessly puts the word baselessly everywhere.
Very good. You got her. Called it a sneak attack and a raid and a siege and corrupt. He also claimed FBI agents planted evidence in his home. No, he didn't. He did not claim that. He did hint at it, but he did not make the claim.
He hinted at the possibility.
Yeah, right. Trump claims agents are furious at FBI leadership for the political weaponization against the president. Parenthetical, me. So that's the quote. Now, she uses so many chopped up quotations that even when I was reading it alone, I started reading it like this. Now, Trump claims agents are furious at the FBI leadership for the political weaponization against the president, me. They don't like being used by people they do not agree with or respect, he wrote in a post. He went on to add that agents are not thrilled with the leadership of the Department of Justice. So now he's talking about head of the FBI, which is Christopher Wray, and head of the Department of Justice, which I believe is, what's his face? Merrick Garland.
Yeah.
There's currently no evidence to support any of Trump's claims. Trump chose current FBI Director Christopher Wray in 2017 after firing former head James Comey amid the investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. And I don't think I'm going to go into the Crossfire Hurricane, but this author, this reporter, whatever she is, brings up Crossfire Hurricane quite a bit. And I asked you before the show, Guns, if you know what Crossfire Hurricane is. And you said no. And I said, of course, because nobody really does. Crossfire Hurricane was the official name of Russiagate investigation. And instead of referencing the Steele dossier, which has been debunked, or, Russiagate, which has been debunked, and lost all credibility on those, they've started using the official term Crossfire Hurricane to describe like another horrible thing that Donald Trump did. And nobody knows what it is. But now that they're using Crossfire Hurricane, they can talk about this mysterious, horrible thing that Trump did. And nobody really knows. Like, you got to dig. You got to do some research to know what it is. But that's besides the point. So it's not clear, it goes on, why Trump suddenly moderated his tone on federal law enforcement. It may have to bring his social media slightly more in line with his rally speeches backing policing. Attacks on the FBI by Trump and his supporters following the Mar-a-Lago search have also come under increasing criticism. Federal authorities warned this month of a spike in threats in law enforcement. And it goes on to talk about what we know. Ricky Schiffer, who assaulted the FBI office in Cincinnati.
Right.
Mentions some other ones that I actually hadn't even heard of. And more or less ends with this idea that Trump is suddenly now trying to get FBI on his side. And he has quotes saying, oh, don't worry, folks. Things like, FBI agents aren't the problem. The FBI agents are the good guys. The agents are okay. Don't go kill any FBI agents is what he's getting at. It's the leadership that's the problem. FBI leadership. And the FBI agents are mad at the leadership.
It's exactly in line with my little FBI informant friend, co-person that I know.
Your buddy,
my
handler.
FBI buddy. Yeah, that was his thing. He was like, "Oh, it's leadership. None of the actual agents." And he's actually a Trump supporter, So,
okay.
So he's an open Trump supporter. Self-proclaimed pencil pusher at the FBI. And his whole response was, "Oh, it's just a small group at the top, and." It doesn't represent all of us out here doing our jobs, blah, blah, blah. So
there you go. So Trump's really leaning into this. And I found it, when I first read it, I found it actually quite threatening. Because he's saying this in response to people attacking FBI agents and calling for the killing of FBI agents. It's in the context of that where Trump is like, no. don't kill any FBI agents. It's the leadership that's the problem. The leadership being Christopher Wray, who it seems like has turned against Trump. Trump put him in the job. And it kind of sounds like a little bit of a threat to Christopher Wray to me. I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to, he's obviously not outright doing that. But when you put the pieces together, if I were Christopher Wray, I would be a little concerned about Trump turning the ire of his supporters from the agency as a whole to Christopher Wray as an individual. Yeah, that would put me a little on edge.
Yeah, there's that Wall Street Journal headline: FBI Director Christopher Wray tried to keep the Bureau out of politics. Then came Mar-a-Lago's search.
Right. Yeah.
So
there's
he's
this whole
just
thing.
trying to be a non-political, a good serving, leader of the FBI. But then Mar-a-Lago. It's all Trump's fault. Yeah.
And there's this whole analysis about how he didn't want to be like Comey. Comey,
right?
The previous one, he
highly
sort of
politicized, but also
famously put himself out in the public eye and was making comments on things, and as the head of the FBI, that's not normal. You're not supposed to be like a public figure. You're a boss spy. Like you're the boss of the feds. You're not a spokesperson.
Right.
So he's trying not to be like Comey, but this whole thing has put Christopher Wray in the spotlight, and he's not a big fan of that. So there you go. Huffington Post, hard at work over the weekend, creating this storyline where, the FBI and the Republican Party as a whole having a very complicated relationship, culminating in Trump sort of calling off the dogs, but putting Christopher Wray on notice, I guess.
Be afraid.
Yeah, I mean, it's something, man.
It is weird. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. Thank you for letting me go through that. And it's time to have a party, I think.